Okay, another Marvel movie has arrived, and with it, the ritual continues safely. We gather once again, not out of excitement, but out of general disaffected habit. We enter the theater already knowing the experience. Assembly line product, fine-tuned through test screenings, studio notes, stripped of risk, sterilized for global consumption. The latest entry in the ongoing experiment to determine just how much audiences are willing to endure before they stop showing up. Now, I don't tune into Marvel much these days, as I doubt anyone else does. The studio's cultural footprint has been shrinking at a rate that would be comical if it weren't so predictable. The tide has seemingly fully turned against the superhero genre, and it's following the general trajectory of the Western. Once dominant, now a nostalgia act kept alive by a few last-ditch efforts from studios. The last Marvel movie I sat through was Deadpool and Wolverine, an experience that felt like a magic pill that could mainline the experience of brain fog or one of those Netflix movies you put on in the background while you clean. But I figured I'd check in on Captain America, just to see if there was any sign of intelligent life left in the MCU. Plus, it's also a convenient pulse check on American culture to see just how many people are willing to see a Marvel movie. The answer is not many. Kang the Conqueror, the villain they bet their entire phase on, has already been jettisoned. The man who was supposed to be the next Thanos, the next existential threat, is now a footnote, buried under an avalanche of half-baked Disney Plus miniseries, along with the unmistakable sense that nothing that Marvel makes matters anymore. And there's something almost poetic about this development with Jonathan Majors. Kang's grand debut in Quantumania already felt like he'd wandered onto the wrong set, and they just rolled with it. An omnipotent villain stranded in a Doctor Who episode, dogpiled once by an army of ants, and twice by an endless cascade of I Am Groots and what ifs. And then, of course, Secret Invasion. You remember Secret Invasion? The Nick Fury spy thriller that ends with a Dragon Ball Z-esque CGI nightmare, with two Skrulls shape-shifting into Thanos and Drax and whatever else they could pull from the asset folder, smashing each other into digital oblivion. The multiverse was always going to be an embarrassment, not just because of how shallow and overstated an idea it was, but because it exposes the real disease at the core of Marvel, their inability to take anything seriously. The house style has become a carnival of bad habits, and self-parody, and endless quips, and lifeless third-act brawls, and budgets that could subsidize a small nation, all in the service of something that no longer pretends to be entertainment. And yet Marvel's response to this nosedive seems to be summoning Robert Downey Jr. Just one more lap around the multiverse should fix it, right everyone? A last-ditch prayer that if they can just conjure up enough nostalgia, enough familiar faces, that the audience won't notice the decline in quality anymore. It turns out when you establish a plot device that allows you to resurrect anyone at any time, to retcon anything, or reboot anything on demand, what you actually create is a playground game of pretend. No, you didn't hit me. I have a magic shield. And the real takeaway from Marvel's slow-motion demise isn't just the fact that they're out of ideas. It's the nihilism, the contempt for their own audience, on display in real time. There is nothing to be gained from treating Kevin Feige like he's the next auteur. He's just a functionary, shaking the jar to see if there's any money left inside. And it's ironic. Endgame, the 2-hour-long spectacle of bombast, still found time for emotional weight. A story about the necessity of moving forward, but Marvel can't seem to learn their own lessons, and they're trapped in a loop of frantic retconning. So now here we are. Kang is erased from existence, ejected from the franchise like a rowdy guy at a strip club. Robert Downey Jr. emerges from retirement like Ric Flair for one last payday, and Marvel, seemingly flailing in every direction at once, trying desperately to figure out what people still care about, as if the past few years haven't already made that answer painfully clear. Now, in the short run, it seems like Marvel might be doing better than it did at its lowest point, which was around The Marvels, a film whose most memorable moment was the record it set on its second week's box office drop. But long-term, things are generally expected to get worse as Disney Plus bleeds money and more content gets rushed out. The problem with the constant noise strategy is that it's already been in play for about 4 years now. We've spent, since WandaVision, watching Marvel scramble to make the multiverse interesting and use TV shows as free focus groups data, and every attempt has failed spectacularly. The multiverse gimmick at its worst has all the substance of Space Jam 2, just an excuse to parade familiar characters across the screen, and at its best is still just an exercise in laziness. Even before watching it, the trailers alone make it clear we are in the nostalgia assembled from focus groups era of Hollywood. John Wick spinoff, because the Mad Max one made some money. How to Train Your Dragon 70, Karate Kid sequel, Superman reboot, the incalculable Thunderbolts movie, which I'll probably have something to say about. Just another attempt at the Graveyard of Studios Fantastic Four. And now, the next generation of Captain America. Enjoy the show. This is the presidential Marvel movie, if there ever was one, released in a pretty significant political moment. It lands with some subtle and refreshing political commentary. All kidding aside, the most political thing about this movie is how desperately it wants to abandon anything political, despite having one of the main characters be the President of the United fucking States. This movie is aware of the moment it inhabits, but unsure how to engage with it. As a result, it does what Marvel movies do best. It pimps its characters to sell home insurance packages and Oreo cookies, and it goes through your system like McDonald's. All right, we live in a new kind of post-Endgame reality where Marvel films are no longer made. They're seemingly processed like graham crackers and crude oil. They don't emerge fully formed from a writer's mind or even a director's vision. They're assembled in post. They're shaped by corporate executives monitoring social media trends, both terrified and conversely desperate for engagement. I don't believe that Marvel product number CA4-2025 was ever intended to be the movie we got. It feels stitched together, like it was rearranged in post-production to suit whatever cultural moment Marvel executives thought they were stepping into after the 2024 election. There are visible seams of reshoots all over this movie, and nowhere is that clearer than the way that the film handles its characters. Mostly its villain, whom I couldn't describe to you if my life depended on it. He exists to hate the president, and that's about it. There's no presence, there's no ideology, there's no real motivation beyond him being the bad guy and also being ugly. Roll credits. Or take the baffling inclusion of Israel's superhero. For those of you unaware, in the comics, she's a flying, caped Mossad agent, decked in white and blue, Star of David emblazoned on her chest. Here she's watered down to the point of near non-existent, a DNI to the president, her only vaguely Israeli trait being her accent. It's obvious that Marvel realized somewhere along the way that including her was going to be a problem, and rather than make a choice to either fully embrace her or to cut her out completely, they hedged their bets. They just minimized her presence so much that by the end, she just feels like a ghost, barely distinguishable from the set dressing and the background noise. And I think that might be just generally true of the entire movie. And the result is this weird object that has the visual feeling of cardboard. Marvel movies used to be about a thing, even if that thing was just arrogant hero learns to be a better person over and over again. It's just a general unspoken rule that alongside whatever comic book set dressing, there has to be something personal to connect with, but there is nothing, and this extends far beyond individual character profiles. The story builds to this dramatic climax that they marketed the hell out of in the commercials, where President Ross turns into the Red Hulk, and it should have been a moment that at least was the most interesting thing to happen in the movie itself. I mean, the final fight of this movie, say what you want about CGI third act action scenes, plays out like a mid-tier Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode. Ross transforms, rampages for about 5 minutes, and is then arrested, only for the movie to continue referring to him as the president as if nothing happened. This is what happens when a cinematic universe becomes too afraid to alter the status quo. Major events unfold, and nothing actually happens. There's this narrative nihilism that by the time the next Marvel installment rolls around, this will all be forgotten. And that's because it will be. And that's the problem with the entire storytelling model. Nothing is self-contained, nothing truly resonates. Every movie is just a stepping stone to the next one, and if you haven't been keeping up, then there's no point in ever keeping up. One of the most baffling aspects is its reliance on Eternals, a film that most either forgot or never saw. The plot hinges on global negotiations over a body of a celestial being that emerged from the ocean at the end of Eternals. This is not a minor subplot to the Captain America spy thriller. This is the main conflict of the film. Remember that, by the way? Do you remember when a giant celestial godhead emerged from the ocean at the end of Eternals? Did you also forget that? Well, tough luck to both of us, because the entire plot hinges on it. If you miss one movie, the whole thing makes no sense. Eternals came out 3.5 years ago, and most people either skipped it or forgot it existed. I mean, this is Marvel's worst nightmare realized. A cinematic universe so bloated that even the people who want to keep up with it are checking out. Superheroes are no longer treated as aspirational figures. They're just simply content. They're tools to be inserted into movies, commercials, shuffled around, repurposed, and replaced as needed. The awe has been drained. We no longer see heroes, we see IPs. We see AI scripts and plot lines dropped over optics issues. And if it wasn't obvious before, it should be obvious now. The MCU is in its death spiral. The fundamentals of this platform are thoroughly rotted. Every genre, every cinematic movement has a shelf life. Westerns once dominated Hollywood. The truth is, going to the movies has become a chore. Every major release is either a remake, a superhero flick, or some other recycled IP designed to sell nostalgia. Marvel is incapable of being different. It's a machine endlessly pumping out variations of the same product, hoping that familiarity keeps audiences coming back. I'll probably be back for Avengers Doomsday, because at this point, this feels like a funeral procession, and I definitely want to be here to see the coffin lowered into the ground. Maybe Fantastic Four will defy expectations. If it does, you'll certainly hear it from me first. But until then, I think I'm going to pick my moments when it comes to Marvel, because it's becoming more and more clear that there is almost nothing left to say about the MCU. So I'll end with an anecdote about my time watching the movie in the theater. About halfway through Captain America, just as the film started to muster some semblance of a plot, and the scene was vaguely communicating that the U.S. was going to war, the fire alarm was pulled. Sirens wailing, white lights flashing, and people in the showing with us just glanced around, unsure whether they were going to leave or stay. And the movie just kept playing. In the audience, people were shuffling very slowly and hesitantly towards the exit. Others were just either too invested in Captain America to care about a fire, or comedically indifferent of their own safety and remained in their seats, squinting past the blinking lights and trying to make out the dialogue over screeching alarms. It was the most compelling moment of the night. This bizarre tension and absurdity. For the first time in Captain America Brave New World, there was real emotion in the room. And I think that that's probably the most succinct thing I could say about this movie is the experience in the theater was better than what was happening on the screen. So, that's all for now. See ya.